Well, people that puppet masters trying to control the narrative. And now appears if she wants to run for supervisor again.
Well, people dubbed Puppy Mas is trying to control the N and now appears if she wants to run for again. But Tiffany Henyard, once a prominent figure in local politics, now faces a beach of accusations that have shaken her authority and influence. Allegations range from extravagant misuse of taxpayer dollars to questionable leadership decisions leading to a rapid collapse of her political standing. This turmoil has sent shockwaves through her supporters and critics alike. Reports indicate funds intended for public services were allegedly diverted toward personal luxuries, including first-class travel, high-end hotel stays, and lavish events. While Henyard insists these expenses were necessary for her duties, critics argue they highlight mismanagement and insensitivity to the financial struggles of Dolton residents, many of whom live in poverty and depend on city services. Her leadership has been further scrutinized for appointing unqualified loyalists, including a police chief who did not meet legal requirements. Critics describe her administration as a personal kingdom rather than a public office. Her financial controversies, divisive leadership style, and public disputes with the town board have alienated colleagues, residents, and even former allies. While some see her defiance as resilience, others perceive it as arrogance. The growing dysfunction in Dolton, with deteriorating infrastructure and plummeting trust in local government, underscores the town's
right here in Thornton Township. You could also say that she fucked out. Her name is.
Yet Henyard supporters claim these accusations are part of a politically motivated attack to discredit a strong female leader. They argue her opponents lack the charisma and influence she possesses. As investigations into alleged misappropriation and ethical violations continue, it has become increasingly difficult for Henyard to portray herself as a victim. The evidence against her mounts. Calls for her resignation grow louder. Her refusal to accept accountability has deepened divisions in the town, creating factions of loyal defenders and relentless detractors. The fallout from her leadership choices has left Dolton in financial, operational chaos. However, some see this crisis as an opportunity for systemic change and greater accountability in local governance. Whether Henyard can recover from these scandals and rebuild her reputation remains uncertain. Will her career be defined by controversy, or will she emerge stronger after overcoming adversity? For now, her political trajectory seems headed for a dramatic and abrupt end, mirroring her rapid rise to power, because two trustees, as you mentioned, did not show up: Chris Gonzalez and Carmen Carlisle. Without them, not enough board members were present to make official. The stakes in local politics were at an all-time high as Dolton shifted from traditional primary elections to a caucus system for selecting nominees. At the center of this pivotal moment was Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who also serves as Thornton Township supervisor and hoped to secure a spot on the 2024 ballot. However, a procedural error at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium derailed her plans, disqualifying her and delivering a significant blow to her ambitions. Illinois State Senator Napoleon Harris, chair of the Democratic Committee in Thornton Township, presided over the caucus. The event drew hundreds of residents eager to witness the political drama unfold. Despite frigid weather, the packed venue buzzed with tension as supporters and opponents gathered to watch a contest that would reshape the town's political landscape. When the results were announced, Harris emerged victorious, winning the Democratic nomination for township supervisor and effectively eliminating Henyard from the race. The audience erupted into applause, with some expressing their excitement so passionately that the scene felt more like a partisan clash than a typical political gathering. Henyard accused Harris and the Democratic Committee of orchestrating the caucus to block her candidacy, characterizing the event as an attempt to sabotage her political future. However, reports suggest the caucus adhered to legal guidelines, aligning with practices in other Illinois municipalities. For Henyard, the outcome marked a dramatic political defeat, described by some as a MCD drop moment for Harris, and a crushing blow for her campaign. Critics argue that her allegations against Harris are the desperate measures of a politician embroiled in scandals during her tenure. This pivotal moment has not only highlighted the stakes of local politics, but also signaled a shift in the town's leadership dynamics. As residents and observers reflect on the implications, many wonder what lies ahead for these two prominent figures in Dolton's evolving political landscape. Right here in Township should also say that she fed out, as her name is out of the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium, flanked by a handful of her most loyal supporters. The evening had taken a dramatic turn, underscoring both defiance and division in a spectacle that would leave lasting impressions on her political career. Hen's voice rang out as she accused State Senator Napoleon Harris, chair of the Democratic Committee in Thornton Township, of orchestrating an unfair, illegal caucus process. He didn't run any of this the right way, she shouted, refusing to concede defeat.
Because two trustees, as you mentioned, did not show up: Chris Gonzalez and Carmen Carlisle. Without them,
as
not enough
evidence
board
of her
members are present to
self-serving
make
tendencies.
Despite
These
her
reports
fiery
have
speech
sparked
during the
outrage.
chaotic and contentious caucus vote, ultimately failed to save her position as she was officially removed from the Democratic ballot for the supervisor of Thornton Township. This public outing was a significant blow, stripping her of her status as a Democratic candidate and highlighting the tenuous grip she had maintained on power to her detractors. It was a moment of vindication to her supporters. It was an unjust ambush for Henyard. It was a humiliating defeat, yet one she vowed to challenge. Supporters argued the caucus was marred by procedural flaws, including capacity limits and changes that they claimed disenfranchised many of her elderly and frail backers. However, Harris and his team, backed by legal advisors, stood firm, insisting the process adhered to Illinois law. Critics countered that the caucus was a calculated move unprecedented in decades, designed to oust Henyard, a polarizing figure who built her career on tenacity and controversy. Henyard showed no intention of retreating quietly. This defeat, however, forced her to reevaluate her next steps. With her name struck from the Democratic ballot, speculation swirled about whether she might mount an independent campaign or align with a more conservative platform. Such moves, though, risked further alienating an already fractured base of supporters. The evening's events underscored the challenges Henyard faced as both a leader and a public figure. Accusations of mismanagement and self-serving governance had steadily eroded her credibility. Her critics seized the moment to amplify claims of financial misconduct and administrative failure, framing her removal as the natural consequence of her divisive leadership style. On social media, disillusioned residents voiced their frustrations, many echoing the sentiment that power had corrupted her once promising leadership. Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dolton and supervisor of Thornton Township had initially earned her praise as a visionary leader, but her administration became increasingly synonymous with controversy. Allegations of extravagant spending, including a widely criticized $33,000 expenditure, painted a stark contrast between her apparent affluence and the financial struggles of her constituents. For many in Thornton Township, this revelation was the final straw. "It's disgusting that she's living like a queen while we can barely get by," one resident lamented as public outmounted Hearn's defiance. Once a symbol of her resolve began to look like sheer obstinacy, the community's demand for accountability grew louder, and even her staunchest supporters found themselves questioning her leadership. For Henyard, the defeat symbolized not just a procedural setback, but a turning point in her career. Her ability to navigate this crisis and rebuild her political identity would determine her future in Illinois politics. The story of Tiffany Henyard's dramatic fall from grace is one of rapid ascent, divided leadership, and the perils of losing touch with the very people who once championed her cause. Whether this marks the end of her political career or the beginning of a reinvention remains to be seen. What is certain is that the challenges ahead will require more than defiance. They will demand a reckoning with the very principles she once claimed to embody. All it took for Tiffy H. out as Democratic nominee township supervisor, and Tiffany Henyard's political career, once marked by high aspirations and public promise, has unraveled amidst allegations of financial mismanagement, contentious leadership. The revelations of her alleged misuse of funds have eroded her support base, leading many who once saw her as a symbol of hope and progress to view her tenure as a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition. What began as a platform of reform and community-focused governance has now been overshadowed by scandals and decisions that appear to prioritize personal gain over public welfare. Her rapid rise to power as both mayor of Dolton and supervisor of Thornton Township initially outcased her as a trailblazing leader. However, the mounting accusations against her, ranging from extravagant spending to mismanagement of public resources, have significantly changed. Critics have painted her downfall as emblematic of political excess, where personal
It's all it took for Tiffany Henyard to come out as the Democratic nominee for Thornton Township supervisor.
comfort, ambition seemed to have taken precedence over the well-being of her constituents. Residents of Dolton and Thornton Township, frustrated by delayed community projects and compromised basic services, have increasingly voiced their discontent. Many believe that the ongoing political infighting and leadership disputes have detracted from addressing the urgent needs of the community. Essential developments such as improvements to parks and public spaces have been stalled due to procedural delays and missed deadlines, exacerbating public frustration. The financial stakes tied to these delays are substantial. According to local officials, the potential loss of grant funding and unapproved permits could cost the community significant resources, forcing taxpayers to bear the burden. Meanwhile, Henyard's administration faces scrutiny from a federal investigation by the FBI, further deepening the crisis. Although no charges have been filed, the investigation alone has cast a shadow over her leadership, causing even her closest allies to distance themselves as her inner Eichel fractures and resignations mount. Rumors of internal discord have added fuel to the fire. Henyard's attempts to counter the growing criticism, most notably through social media, have often backfired. In one heated Facebook video, she accused her political rivals of orchestrating a smear campaign, an approach that has alienated rather than reassured the public. Her dismissive attitude toward critics and refusal to engage meaningfully with community concerns have only intensified the backlash. Efforts to sway public opinion through neighborhood events and media appearances have been perceived as desperate and insincere. Critics argue that these gestures, rather than demonstrating empathy, highlight a leadership style increasingly out of touch with the community's needs. Her administration's failure to deliver on significant projects, coupled with the erosion of public trust, has led to widespread disillusionment. Tiffany Henyard's story now serves as a stark reminder of how the pursuit of power, when disconnected from accountability and public service, can lead to political collapse. Her dramatic fall from grace underscores the challenges of maintaining credibility in the face of scandal and the risks of alienating the very people a leader is meant to serve. For many residents, her tenure has come to symbolize the consequences of misplaced priorities and a leadership style that has grown increasingly disconnected from its original vision. Her fiery speech during the chaotic and contentious caucus vote ultimately failed to save her position, as she was officially removed from the Democratic ballot for the supervisor of Thornton Township. This public outing was a significant blow, stripping her of her status as a Democratic candidate and highlighting the tenuous grip she had maintained on power. To her detractors, it was a moment of vindication. To her supporters, it was an unjust ambush. For Henyard, it was a humiliating defeat, yet one she vowed to challenge. Supporters argued the caucus was marred by procedural flaws, including capacity limits and changes that they claimed disenfranchised many of her elderly and frail backers. However, Harris and his team, backed by legal advisors, stood firm, insisting the process adhered to Illinois law. Critics countered that the caucus was a calculated move, unprecedented in decades, designed to oust Henyard, a polarizing figure who built her career on tenacity and controversy. Henyard showed no intention of retreating quietly. This defeat, however, forced her to reevaluate her next steps. With her name struck from the Democratic ballot, speculation swirled about whether she might mount an independent campaign or align with a more conservative platform. Such moves, though, risk further alienating an already fractured base of supporters. The evening's events underscored the challenges Henyard faced as both a leader